So the next topic is cost-neutral consolidation of partially funded pension schemes. And the work here is describing a framework to measure cost neutrality of the consolidation of two partially funded earnings-related pay-as-you-go pension schemes into one from the perspective of the financier of the schemes. So this is a very interesting sort of area of consideration for someone like me that spent a fair bit of my time in the pensions area, and I'm delighted to introduce Kaarlo Reipas from Finland. You have his full details there, but just briefly, he works as a senior mathematician at the Finnish Centre for Pensions, developing long-term projection models on Finnish public earnings-related pensions and evaluating financial impacts of pension legislation. He has prepared financial analysis of several major pension reforms, and we're going to hear all about them as he comes to the podium. Please welcome Kaarlo to the podium.
Okay. So, thanks for the introduction. It was nice to hear from you. I did recognize myself from your talk doing actuarial work in the social insurance sector. So, yeah, interesting presentation. I'm going to talk about this. This is joint work with Ismo Risku, my colleague from the Finnish Centre for Pensions. And yeah, so let's go into it. In 2017 to 2021, there was an effort to consolidate the two largest Finnish earnings-related pension schemes into one. So these are the private sector worker scheme, which is called DUEL in Finnish, and then the municipal sector worker scheme, which doesn't have a useful name, but so I'm just going to call it the municipal scheme. And these are, in the Finnish context, these are quite large earnings-related pension schemes. They're statutory schemes. Together, these two schemes cover about 90% of Finnish workforce. So basically, all work in Finland done by workers in either the private sector or the municipal sector is covered by one of these two schemes, and insured and contributions paid, pensions accrued, so forth. The Finnish pension landscape is dominated by the statutory earnings-related system. So if these two schemes would be put together, the resulting scheme would have accounted for a majority of Finnish pension expenditure. But the merger didn't happen. So a little bit about the Finnish earnings-related pension scheme. It's a defined benefit scheme that's arranged into, or defined benefit system that's arranged into several pension schemes by sector. So different sector workers have their own scheme, entrepreneurs have their own scheme, and then there are some smaller groups with their own schemes. They mostly have same benefits currently. In the past, there have been more differences in the benefits, but they differ in how the benefits are financed and what kind of funding there is in the different schemes. But in general, the employees pay about a third of pension contributions, and the employers pay about 2/3. And at least the private and the municipal scheme, they're pay-as-you-go schemes with partial funding, and the funds cover like roughly a third of the present value of accrued pension rights. Some of the other schemes don't have funds at all, so they're purely pay-as-you-go schemes. So DUEL, the private sector worker scheme, is the largest one. It's a decentralized scheme, so there are private pension insurance companies and pension funds which compete in the market, and the employer can choose where they arrange pension insurance, in which pension insurance company or pension fund. In the municipal scheme, there's an organization called Keva, which has a monopoly in municipal pension insurance. So all municipalities have to insure with Keva. But some municipality-owned employers can choose between Duell and the municipal scheme. Here are some figures from these two schemes. Duell has like 1.6 million insured employees. The municipal scheme has 0.6 million insured employees, and in the last column, 2.5 million insured employees. That's basically everybody working in Finland. If we look at the last three rows, pension contributions as a percentage of wages in Duell, the contribution level is something like 24.2% of wages. And in the municipal scheme, it's a bit higher, 28.2%. And paid benefits are a little bit more than that as a percentage of the wage sum. And the difference between contributions and paid benefits is financed from investment returns of assets. And in the last row, you can see the amount of assets as a percentage of the wage sum, and these are 2021 figures. So this is a major thing in Finland, these two schemes. I do long-term projections, so here's a picture of long-term projections on pension expenditure in these two schemes. So the blue line is the private sector scheme. So these are projected pension expenditure as a percentage of the wage sum, and I'm not going to go into detail about all the assumptions we have behind our long-term projections, but I will explain this sharp rise in pension expenditure that's projected to happen. So that's mainly population dynamics. So there's a historically low level of fertility in Finland currently, and it's assumed in this projection that fertility will be 1.45 for the future. So that means that there will be more pensioners in relation to workers, and this means that the pension expenditure will rise. In the municipal sector, the expenditure is a bit higher. There are some historically better benefits in the municipal sector, but these will go away in time. The expenditure will stay higher than Duell, and the reasons behind this are a bit longer longevity in the public sector, and also more females in the workforce in the public sector. So let's go into the consolidation of these two schemes. So the aims of the project were, first of all, better pooling of risks. The larger the pension schemes are, of course, it's inherently risks are pooled better. Then there was a planned healthcare reform by the Finnish government at the time, which possibly would have privatized parts of healthcare. And this would have led to worker migration between the sectors probably. So in a pay-as-you-go scheme, changes in the amount of workforce will of course result in challenges in financing. So this consolidation would have neutralized such effects of worker migration. And also one aim was competitive neutrality in the municipal sector, so the municipalities and wouldn't be tied to a monopoly insurer, but could choose where to insure their personnel. So there were 2 working groups under the Ministry of Social Affairs and Health, and a central constraint in this work was cost neutrality for financiers of the schemes, the sponsors of the schemes. So in the sense of expectation, so there should be no expected transfer of costs between private sector employers and municipal employers in this merger. So, and this is what we developed a framework to measure this cost neutrality, and I'm going to talk about that. Let's skip over this slide. In the end, it was decided not to merge the schemes, and as the planned healthcare reform failed, and actually the Finnish government resigned because of that in 2019, and this lessened pressure for the project. And also a sufficiently robust method of achieving this cost neutrality could not be agreed upon, and our work was central in this realizing this later point. So let's talk about our framework. So in this framework, a pension scheme has some insured payroll for each year that we get as a result of the projection. And then there are paid benefits, cash flows, pension contributions coming in, and we have funds and some return on funds. And the funds evolve according to this equation, so we get return each year for the funds, and we get contributions coming in, benefits paid out, and some, on average, like half a year of returns for these contributions that have come in, minus the benefits paid out. So, and then we have an assumption that the insured payroll and benefits and contributions have constant growth after some future cutoff year, and this growth is assumed to be less than asset return, because if that were not the case, then funding pensions would not make any sense. So with these assumptions, a pension scheme, we can define a theoretical sustainable premium mu for a pension scheme, such that if the contribution is mu percent of wages, the ratio of funds to insured wage, the insured wage sum stabilizes at some level. And this sustainable premium is some kind of indicator of the financial status of a pension scheme. So here's an example. The blue line in the first picture is again the projected benefits in dual as a percentage of wages, which are projected to grow. And then the yellow line is the level of the sustainable contribution. So so the level of the yellow line is calibrated such that the assets in the scheme as a percentage of wages stabilize at some level. So if the contribution were any higher, the assets would be on an exponentially rising trajectory, so they would explode. And if the contribution were any lower, the assets would start to decline in the long term and go negative and explode in the other direction. So there's a unique level where this exponential growth doesn't happen, but the assets stabilize. And this is the sustainable level which we defined. And we decided, or we figured out that to measure cost neutrality of the... Okay, first let's talk about what's the consolidation of two schemes. So that means that we just put together the payrolls, the paid benefits, the assets, and this forms a new larger scheme. So So we figured out that the consolidation of two schemes is cost neutral if and only if the sustainable premiums that we defined for the separate schemes are the same. So because the sustainable premium of the consolidated scheme is actually, it's like a weighted average of the sustainable premiums of the separate schemes. So only in the case that the sustainable premiums are the same, there will be no change for either party in the consolidation. So yeah. If this were not the case, okay, let's look at a picture. I think this shows better what I mean. So here are the two schemes, the private sector scheme and the municipal scheme, and on the x-axis there's the net present value of the future wage sum. So it's smaller in the municipal scheme and larger in TyEL, and the area is the net present value of future benefits that have accrued and will accrue in the future. And when you divide the area by the length in the x-axis, you get benefits divided by wage sum, which gives the height of this picture. So it's a bit higher in the municipal sector than in TyEL because there are more benefits there accrued. And then a part of these benefits is covered by the assets in the scheme. And the unfunded part, which is the rest, is actually just the sustainable premium. So some part of the benefits is covered by assets. The rest have to be paid or financed by contributions collected in the future. And because the municipal scheme has so much more benefits in relation to wages, the unfunded part is higher. So a larger part of the future benefits have to be financed by future contributions. And so these do not match now in these two schemes. So that means that the consolidation cannot be cost neutral. And we figured out two neutralization methods that can be used to bring the sustainable premiums to the same level. And these two methods that we recognized were we adopt the first one, the margin method. So in this case, the financiers of the less funded scheme would pay a margin into the scheme before consolidations to increase the amount of assets and decrease the sustainable premium. And another method that we recognized was the exclusion method, in which a part of the benefits would be excluded from the consolidation and remain financed by the financiers of that scheme. So actually, we can get the size of this neutralization margin from this picture. So that area that I have highlighted there, that's the amount of assets that would have to be added into the municipal scheme before this consolidation in order to bring the sustainable premiums to the same level. So the future contribution level for either TyEL employers and municipal employers wouldn't change as a result of this consolidation. And using this framework, we found that cost neutrality is really difficult to achieve robustly. And you can think about this from a liability matching perspective when you're bringing in assets, and then you're bringing in assets, so those are funds, and then future contributions, and then you're bringing in future benefits. When you look at like different scenarios and vary the assumptions, these usually don't change in the same direction or by the same amount. So when we perform some sensitivity analysis, of course, when you calibrate this in the sense of the expectation, then in different scenarios, actually it's difficult to achieve cost neutrality. But we found that the exclusion method, in which you exclude some benefits from the consolidation, that performed better under sensitivity analysis. So the variance from neutrality was smaller in that. Or the deviance from neutrality. I'm not going to go into detail here, but for example, we did some sensitivity analysis with regards to investment returns. So when you have lower investment returns, there was then assumed in the projection, then you get some deviance from neutrality, and the same in the high return case, but with the exclusion technique, these deviances were smaller. A lot of details that I skipped, but we have a paper on this, so you can find the details from that. And with that, thanks for your time. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thanks very much, Kaarlo. Some fascinating issues there. I do have one question already on the app, so if anyone else wants to ask on the app, please do so. And again, if you'd prefer to talk into the microphone, one will be provided to you. So the first question from Mike Thornton is, with the benefit of hindsight, was cost neutrality a reasonable expectation?
Well, to answer that, I think it was never an expectation to have like full cost neutrality, but rather cost neutrality in the sense of the expectation. And yeah, so we figured early on that full cost neutrality would probably not be possible with any reasonable technique. So yeah.
Thank you for that one. I might just ask one myself while we're waiting for any others. I was fascinated with the slide that showed the contribution rates going from around 30% projected out to around up to 40% for the private sector and municipal being higher benefits. Could you just describe a little bit the level of the benefits, and are these the full retirement benefit, or is there any other benefit? Because in Australia we have a contribution system of 10.5%, and there's been a long debate to get it to that level, and there is a social security pension in addition, but 30 to 40% is a very interesting figure coming from the Australian perspective.
Yes. Sure. Those were the benefits. The contribution level is a bit lower because we have returns on investments that can be used to finance pensions. But these are the main part that people receive. This earnings-related system provides something like 90% of pensioners' pension income. They also get some like social security housing benefits in addition to that, but this is the main part of people's income when they retire in Finland. So voluntary and like employer-specific pensions have a really small role in Finland.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the floor? And as again, if you have any questions you'd like to ask Kaarlo a little bit later on, please submit them, and we'll have the general sort of Q&A session at the end. So if there aren't any other questions popping up, I'd just like to thank both Kaarlo and his absent co-author Ismo for a very interesting paper. So thank you very much for that.